Okay, it is 11:02. I'll just kind of keep an eye on who's coming in and have them join us. But let's go ahead and kick off this Lead and Inspire webinar series with Women of Asphalt. Okay, so welcome everybody to today's webinar featuring Women of Asphalt. We are an exceptional community of professionals dedicated to advancing and empowering women in the asphalt industry. With almost 3,500 members across 22 branches, spanning 28 states, Women of Asphalt has become a driving force in fostering gender equality and creating opportunities for women within the asphalt industry. We are excited to share some news with you today. Something to mark your calendars for is our inaugural Women of Asphalt Day national event, which will be at the same week as World of Asphalt in Nashville, Tennessee. It is scheduled for March 27th, and we hope everybody on this call and your friends to join us during that day. More information will come out around that activity and what that day will entail for you as we approach it. So the conference will feature inspiring keynote speaker, engaging panel discussions, interactive workshops, and valuable networking opportunities. We will serve as a catalyst for personal and professional growth and a celebration of the remarkable achievements women in the industry have accomplished. So as I said, more details on the registration process will be forthcoming, and we will now just dive right into our webinar today. So just a quick housekeeping note, I will keep everybody muted and we're going to keep the cameras off except for our guests today, Jeani Ringkob and Sandy Brasier. And we will have a great conversation with them. So it's a great pleasure that I introduce our esteemed mother-daughter duo and talk a little bit about their career in the industry and gain a lot of inspirational thoughts. I had the opportunity to meet with them on Monday and talk a little bit about what we cover here, and I'm excited for them to share all of their wisdom that they've gained, and also just ideas of how we can improve ourselves and improve the industry as a whole. So Jeani is a dynamic force in the world of business strategy and marketing. With 2 decades of hands-on experience in construction and agriculture, she knows what it takes to build and sustain a successful enterprise. From navigating family tragedy to thriving in competitive environment, Jeani's journey is an inspiring testament to resilience and growth. She is a true advocate for entrepreneurs, helping them harness data-driven insights and provide proven frameworks to not only just survive, but to thrive. And Sandy, on the other hand, found herself thrusted into a leadership role during a challenging period of her life. After her husband's unexpected passing, Sandy stepped up to the plate, learning the ropes of the business, leading her family through a turbulent time. Her story is a powerful lesson in crisis management and perseverance, showcasing her unwavering dedication to her family's company. So let's join Jeani and Sandy as they share their unique perspectives and experiences and wisdom in the world of business, leadership, and personal growth. So with that, I will start off and I'll just start asking some questions to each of you, and feel free to add anything. If I direct a question to you, Jeani, if Sandy, if you have something you want to add, feel free. This is really an open conversation to learning more about you and what we can learn from your experiences. So, Jeannie, I'll start with you. You've faced a number of challenges in your journey, from your family tragedy to taking on multiple roles in your family's asphalt business. Can you share some key lessons you've learned about resiliency and staying motivated during tough times?
Sure. I mean, I think having good people around you, I was fortunate, especially during that time. It was really all hands on deck with the family. So I think my family got even tighter during that time. So also, I had a lot of previous mentors in the industry. I think our industry is incredible about it always at least has been in my experience about I've had a lot of mentors around me in various ages and generations from different parts of the industry. So having them around during that time was really incredible.
Especially Michael Leary.
Yeah, Michael Leary was, he's kind of an icon in the industry and
Good
somebody was a dear family friend of my father and my mom's. So I think he was at all my kids' baby showers and maybe not quite at my baby shower for myself, but pretty close probably. But having people like that there with me to surround myself with was really helpful. I would say, I think having a plan, for me, I think coming from maybe that experience is why I probably have a propensity to just have a plan. So something to fall back on. I think that was maybe one of those times I've learned. So I think coming past that into other experience I've had since then, my husband and I ran agricultural commodities trading business I was in that for 10 years. Him even longer, and that ended abruptly, and transition's always hard. And I think from my early experiences, I learned to have a plan and really surround myself with mentors.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that we'll talk about and maybe dive a little bit more into a little bit later is how important having relationships, right, in whatever type of work you do, how they support you and how you can support others in that, and how valuable it is. Sometimes we take for granted, our relationships sometimes, and to be able to fall back on those relationships really expresses the importance and how valuable those are for us as we navigate this world, right?
Right, absolutely. And I mean, I would say I've always had a natural inclination. My husband will probably agree to when things aren't going well, I'm totally fine to just take action, keep going and shift directions. So I think the counter of that is, like I mentioned, that having a plan. But you have to balance those two things. You have to have a plan and where you think you want to go. But when things come up and challenges come up, you also have to be willing to make a new plan and kind of step into that.
They do all the time.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree. Plans are so important. I think sometimes when we're younger and starting to kind of develop what we want in our professional career, sometimes we just dive in and we don't really create a plan, right? And understanding maybe like what our 3-year, 5-year goals are, because if you don't know where you're going, you don't know what you're doing in the moment, right?
Right.
So plans are so important. Okay, Sandy, what I want to ask you is, as you stepped up as a leader during the crisis after your husband's passing, how did you find the strength to lead your family's business? And what advice would you have for women in similar situations who get thrusted into a leadership position unexpectedly?
Oh gosh, when I look back on it now, especially the first couple of years, I don't think I had a plan. I was just day to day making everything work. And it was really hard because each of the kids needed something, learning how to work as the salesman and representative for Brasier that I'd never had to do before was very challenging. And you're scared, you're afraid, and I know one of the things that motivated me really swiftly was early on there was a suggestion that perhaps we sell the company. And I just remember saying, well, Jeani, who was our accountant, we had just finished the end of the year, financial statements and done the tax return and all that. Because this happened 2nd of March, January, talking about March. But anyway, I had asked what this number meant in this account, deferred taxes. And he said, well, if you stop the business right away, you would owe that money to the IRS. And I just remember telling the kids, well, we're going to go back to work because I don't have that much money. So it was like black and white to me.
So I just want to kind of paint a picture for everybody who didn't have the privilege of our conversation on Monday. A little bit about, why don't you tell us what role you had in the company before your husband's passing? So that kind of gives us a feel, everybody on the call, a feel of what you were doing in the business prior, and then how much you took on afterwards.
We formed it in 1981, and I did all the books forever, back to when used one of these green ledger sheets that my daughter.
She still carries them around. Where she goes. She writes notes to me on green ledger sheets.
And write the payroll checks and everything, the licenses, the permits, all that stuff. And because Clarence just didn't want to be bothered with it, and he was the salesman, the people person. I was the details, and I could also work at my other job, which was cleaning teeth, and which I loved, and I didn't want to give that up either. So I did the books.
Okay.
And gradually over 23 years, I had a very elaborate computer and an office manager and a bookkeeper and an accountant. But to begin with, it was kind of just me.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I had to go talk to the people and get work and be at the jobs and all that. And I still did the books too, but I think it all saved me, kept me so busy,
Yeah. Yeah. So you were in a position that was really I'll say the backbone of the organization, but not really the face of the organization. And then you became the face, right?
Yeah.
Which requires a whole nother set of leadership skills. And
And where we had ended up working most of the time was in New Mexico. And I think I see one of my good mentors on here, Diana. And she was a great help to me too, because there's not many women in the asphalt industry. There's more now, but back in 2000, not so much.
Right.
And so getting the men there to take me serious and believe that I could do this, they were not very into it at first.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, it's gotten a little better now, but I think it's something that, we all face in industries that have been predominantly male oriented. So, all right. So Jeani, you faced a lot of your share of ups and downs while running businesses. So can you give maybe some strategies or mindset shifts that have helped you that could help other women as they navigate challenges within their own careers in their life?
Yeah. So, I mean, and just to circle back and add on a point before I move on to this question, you know, and I guess it kind of ties into it is watching my mom. And I mean, not only was she taking all that stuff and switching into that role, she was grieving at the same time. Like, this was completely unexpected, happened overnight. You know, so I think I probably learned how to, you know, stay busy. I learned how to watch perseverance. I would say I came from a gritty family, with ranchers on one side, contractors on the other. But I think watching her kind of marry that grittiness with that perseverance definitely developed some mindsets in myself. And I would say that's probably something I would, you know, find that gritty part of yourself, or find what motivates you to persevere in something. I know one of my favorite authors is Jon Acuff. I would highly recommend. He has several great books. I love the one Soundtracks, and actually his daughters, one in college, one in high school, actually wrote one for kids. And I just had my kids listen to this, and it talks about the stories that we tell ourselves inside our own head about situations, and, you know, are they even true, and are they helpful and stuff like that. And I think as I've went through life, I've really tried to be more intentional about controlling those stories for myself, instead of, because we all have that propensity, but I think as women, we are much more inclined to fall into a trap of playing negative soundtracks to ourselves, as Jon Acuff would say. So we have to be really intentional about figuring out what are the soundtracks that we want to hear. How are we going to develop ourselves? And one of the things I think I wish I would have done more, and you kind of alluded earlier to having a plan. I wish I would have, I mean, granted, I was still in college when this happened. So I was in Colorado several days a week, still trying to finish college, and then driving to be on the project as many days of the week and over the weekend as I could. And I was either on projects or selling. And it was like, it's all like a blur, but, you know, I wish during that time, and granted, I kind of had that going on, but I wish I would have had somebody maybe helping me, or taken the initiative myself to have been more strategic about challenging myself and setting goals early on, and figuring out what is it going to take to get there. So now I'm having conversations with my kids about, here's a goal, but how do we like reverse engineer that to get, like, what do you, like, my daughter was setting goals the other day and she wants to cheer in college. And I said, well, that's great, but let's talk about what you need to be doing for the next 6 months that are going to help you achieve that. And I mean, she's 11, so she's got, right? But she's already on a competitive cheer team. But she's got some skills that are like, she knows she has to develop to even be able to stay on that team. So, I wish I would have had somebody to sit me down and kind of have some of those conversations. I think I had great people that were inspiring and believed in me, but I wish I would actually put pencil to paper and been a little bit more intentional about laying out that plan, even if it changed, because it would have completely changed still when my dad passed, but I would have had the skills to create a new plan.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think the mentorship program in Women of Asphalt is a great example of finding people that could do that, but they don't even have to be in this industry. You can find parallel industries, other industries, speakers, people that, you know, find a coach. I'm leaving for a retreat with a coach at the end of the month to work on, you know, finances, mindset, productivity, all those things. And we all need those kinds of things. So find those things early, but develop the skills that go along with it, those executive skills.
Yeah, you know, it is so important, and it kind of goes back to what we originally said around relationships, right? And a coach is a relationship, And what you're doing is you're learning from all the different people that you surround yourself with. And I know we've heard, people out there in the world talking about, you are who you surround yourself with, right? And so looking at who's your people that surround you. And, if it's not the kind of people you want to be, then maybe you need to look for other people that are going to help support your vision for what your life looks like.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you don't want to do that stuff in a silo. Like in the end, it comes down to you, but you need people to bounce ideas off of, and you need people to tell you, to ask those questions when they see you or you hear yourself telling yourself certain things, to say, is that really even true? And does it help what you want to accomplish? I think those are some of the questions that I think are really important when we find ourselves thinking about what's possible or not possible in our careers and families and our life, like in all the pieces.
Yeah. And a lot of times we're so busy doing all the things in our life that we don't even take the time for that self-reflection, right? And
Right.
and that is so important to create what you want out of life.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, Sandy, I have a question for you. Your experience during those difficult times showcases how resilient you are. And I know we've touched a little bit on it around relationships and the value of relationships in the industry. What kind of advice or lessons can you give us around those relationships and how they supported you during that time, and and how that helped with your adversity?
Oh, well, my family was, they never said, don't do that. They all,
We were all certifiable. Like,
yeah.
we all, like,
Jeani went out and got the contractor's license, and Dustin started driving truck and all kinds of stuff. But to build the relationships that I had to build to be the face and the salesperson, for Brasier, that was hard, and they're invaluable. And some of those people that I met then are really, really good friends still. So, Michael Larry, I already knew through Clarence, and he actually did the eulogy for my husband's funeral and came that day and kind of took over, because I really was in a fog, he's just priceless, and people like that, and he still is. And so even though it was hard with some of those gentlemen in New Mexico, especially in Santa Fe, at the higher levels of the DOT, because I'm sure I was the only female contractor that was bidding, and so there was a lot of negativity, like, they wouldn't return my calls or wouldn't see me when I'd start going by and dropping in, and no one would see me. They were busy, and it was hard, but you just have to never give up, because I knew that I had to do this. And once I got my foot in the door, the majority of them I liked very well and worked well with, So, but if anyone would have told me that a year before this happened, I would have said, oh, absolutely not. I could never do that. So sometimes you are forced into doing something and it works that you never thought you could do, and that builds on itself then, So relationships are just key. You know, because those things got me work for, it's still getting the company work, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say, as an observer of that, I mean, everybody in my family was part of building those relationships. We were either on the crew, but all of us were salespeople too. And I went to sales and marketing for Koch Industries, and then back for Brasier Asphalt, and then several other different companies in the industry, and then outside of the industry. But it was, when I think about those particular relationships, they were the hardest one, because first off, they were looking at this company and being like, are they even going to be here? Like, is this woman going to keep going? Is she going to be here? Like, and they didn't know. And so in that regard, you kind of can't blame them for being like, I am just not even going to deal with this. I'm just going to ignore this. Right. Or whatever, or they just doubted it or whatever it was. Right. But I think our team inside the company stuck with us. Like, my mom has always had incredibly low turnover.
Yeah, the employees,
They stuck with us. Our partners, at the time, it was Koch
which
Industries.
was Diana
Now it's,
and Michael Larry.
Now it's Holly Asphalt. They're in New Mexico. They stuck with us. So I think when they start to see the other relationships, they started coming around. But I would say those relationships now are much deeper because they were the hardest one. When I look at, the last 10, 15 years of running this company for my mom, even when I look at it now, and Joe has purchased the company, and he was with us for over 30 years. Like, he's basically a family member as well. And
He was key
he's
to
still
working, because he was there in the 90s, I think 95 or something, when we hired him, and he's the person I sold it to a year ago.
And to that, like, when mom brings that up, like, and I would say part of the legacy that my dad gave us is that it was all about relationships with him.
Yeah.
And he didn't talk about or brag about his relationships, but Joe was in a really bad place when my dad and him connected, and my dad was watching him and seeing how he responded. And like, when he came to my mom and said, I want to hire this guy, and here's the situation, which we won't talk about the specifics, but my mom's like, oh my, no, like, this is a bad idea. We can't do that. And he said, but I believe, like, I believe in this man, and I want to try. Let's try. And I can think back to lots of relationships that my dad did that and kind of set the precedent. And that paid off, I think, for us later, when people were willing to take risks. But then we also kind of carried that on and have been willing to take calculated risks on people and relationships.
Yeah. But even with the other employees, there is probably a third of them that were there before Clarence passed away, and that's 30 years now. So,
wow.
And then the new ones that we've got that came on after I was there, they're still there.
Very little.
Very few, very small turnover.
Yeah.
So I feel like I did get a good relationship with the districts and the people in charge, and with our crews, our people.
Well, and your low turnover and the fact that people want to stay in the organization is a testament, right, to how you treat people, and how vulnerable you are with them, and they can be with you. I know on our call Monday, you talked a little bit about always, trying to get out in the field, making that connection, knowing who your employees were, who their families are, and just kind of know in general about them. And I think your relationship with them and the loyalty that they have to your company and to you and your family, is a testament of that.
Yeah. Well, when Jeani was the salesperson, and when she was gonna go on to back to Colorado for a while, she found a gentleman, and he's still there. So
We
Yeah.
can't get him to use a digital CRM, but he's still there. He still does a great job.
Yeah,
And that probably bothers me more than it bothers anybody else.
he's a people person.
Yeah.
Not that.
Yeah.
And that's how Clarence was.
Yeah.
I think he wrote one check in our entire life together.
Okay, so let's see. Next question for you, Jeannie. As a successful entrepreneur and advocate, you've helped business owners and leaders grow stronger businesses. So, how can women in the asphalt industry assert themselves as leaders and contribute to the growth and success of their organization?
So I think one of the things, and I think I just left, was just at Women in Construction, and one of the topics I was speaking on there was recruitment and retention. And specifically, we talked a lot more about like millennials and stuff like that, but I think it's relevant across the board. And then I was just talking with some other, SAPAs about the same concept, and it's engagement. Like, I think about engagement, and I'm a research person. Like, part of the process I use with clients now, and whether it's to help them build workforce and recruitment in their businesses, to help them grow their sales and marketing, brand strategy, whatever it is, it always starts with research and data, and like, what do you know, and stuff like that. So I think the same is true. So twofold, I would say, learn about your organization, learn about, really understand what matters to the success of your organization at a whole, and understand how they're perceived in the marketplace. That may also dictate how happy you are there. So it's an important thing to know, but understand that. So know the research, know, what are their products? Who makes it tick? What's the history there? What are the things that make them or break them? How do they make their money? What are their biggest challenges? So I think knowing that is going to really impress upon other people that are influential in the company that you've done some footwork on your own, because that stuff is very rarely actually given to you, which is probably a flaw in how we retain people. And that kind of goes back to that engagement piece. Engagement is the number one thing. Only 26% of millennials feel engaged in the company they work in. And the American economy is losing over $3 billion in the economy due to lack of engagement, directly related to engagement and workforce issues. And I think that problem is only getting worse with generations, starting with my generation and moving down. It's really, really important. So get engaged and engage people that you want to influence your career, and engage the people that can be. And I mean, I guess I always am a little bit strategic about business. Look at the people that are going to benefit you and engage with them. Like, it's strategic for your career, but you have to be, because nobody else is going to be for you. So the two things that really come to mind are: do your research, know what success looks like. I'm a proponent of helping companies build and help educate their team members on what success looks like for them. But most companies don't do that innately. They're too busy with other things. So take the initiative to figure out for yourself. Like, and an example of that is, what are the 3 things related to your job that if you did those 3 things every single day, or maybe it's every single week, you would actually be making progress towards the objective they've set. Right? And make sure you prioritize those, and that you're focused on those, and they're front and center. Doing something like that is going to make you stand out above everybody else. I mean, just night and day. It'll put you leaps and bounds in front of that stuff, and being able to prioritize even when people are asking you to do other things. Yes, you might want to lean in and help, but know what your priorities are. And you may have to do a little digging to actually even figure out what that is. But if you go and you're asking the right questions of the people above you to try to understand that you want to know what success looks like and what objectives and metrics you can apply to that, and then what are the 3 main things you should focus on, they would be so impressed by your initiative and your willingness to really understand that and lean in and really be productive and engaged. I think that shows engagement right there. And you're also going to get a lot more satisfaction out of every role you have if you do things like that and you're more focused. And I think about, like, we all in this group right here, we have the pull of family, we have career, we have everything else. So that is also going to give you some peace of mind and some bandwidth to really be able to be productive. It's those people, those women, they're like, how do they do that? And how do they keep excelling and reaching goals? It's probably because they're doing something like that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Sometimes we get so caught up in how do I advance? What is my goals? What does my future look like? That sometimes we forget to say, well, wait, I'm working for an organization that I can make a difference in. And to your point, understanding all of the important things about that organization, what you can do to support the organization. And I mean, you just said it, beautifully, that with your 3 things and with connecting with the people, right? Showing them what you have to offer, what you can offer the organization. And in kind, that comes back to you, right? Because they know that you care about the organization. And it's not just, what's my next step? How do I move up? How do I make more money? All of those things,
Right.
which are important.
They are,
also,
but those things will come if you're engaged in where you're working. And if it's not a good fit for you culturally, if you don't like how that company is perceived in the hearts and the minds of the marketplace that it's in, to its customers, to its partners, doing this research is going to help you figure that out as well, which is, that's not a curse, that's a blessing.
Right. And to take the next step in, okay, if this isn't a company I'm aligned with personally, with my values or with my passions, then that, like you said, it's a blessing. You get to decide, okay, where does that lie? And, you may leave, but obviously you're leaving where you will become more engaged in that organization because it's really where you see yourself and you're more aligned with.
Yeah, and then I think some of the comments you just mentioned remind me of, I think it was at Expo this year, a client of mine brought his daughters and his wife along for just a few of the days, and they weren't going to come to Expo, and his daughters are both in high school. And I said, you know what, can you bring them one day? I'm going to get them passes and just come, we'll have lunch together and just give me like 2 or 3 hours. And let's hang out for 2 or 3 hours. And he was like, they are not going to like this. I'm like, I don't I tell my kids all the time, I don't care. That's too bad. And I said, well, just try it. Like, it's fun. I mean, it's amazing. So he did, and I got them passes. We went and toured around. I took them to the backside so they got to see like the press room area. I went and introduced them to several women around the group. I actually took them over to Women of Asphalt and introduced them to several people at the booth. I took them to several companies that I thought, I mean, one thing I was not aware of, and I think even growing up in the industry, but yet you're still kind of in your own bubble, like where I was in a family business. I got to know that business really, really deep, but I maybe didn't get to know the industry really, really wider until like I went and worked for Coke Industries and some other stuff. And even now, I am amazed at how wide the breadth of this industry is and the opportunities within it. If you want to be a videographer, if you want to be a journalist, like you can do almost any career inside of this industry. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to show them that, but then also I was very honest with them. And I think I have a pragmatic approach to things, probably you've realized, but I also told them, this is an industry where you can accelerate in a career as a woman faster than other industries. It is a strategic advantage as any young woman to target industries like ours and say, I'm building a career there. Because right now our industry has never been so hungry to have women at the table. And there's also rules and regulations that are forcing them to do that. That as they're doing that, I know lots of men that have been just saturated in this industry forever that are saying, I'm so grateful for the women that are rising into leadership in my business now. They're making huge differences. They're showing us perspectives we've never experienced. So selfishly for women everywhere, and selfishly because I love the industry, I think this is a great place for young women to say, it doesn't matter what you're into, you can find a place to build a career here and probably accelerate to the top faster than almost any, like, you know, I know my daughter loves beauty products, but I'm like, it's not there, honey. Like, sorry. It's the book, The Blue Ocean Strategy, right? It's the same concept. Like I tell my clients, you know, how can you get yourself out of the bloody water and go over where it's blue water, where you are different and you are the only one and you can really set yourself apart? That's how you capture market share. It's the same thing in our careers, in our business. Get out of the bloody water industries and come over here because it's incredible. Especially for women. So I would say that's something that we should all be telling young women who are entering college, moving through college, leaving high school that don't want to go to college, right?
Yeah.
I know that supervisor roles on crews and moving into operational management positions are incredible opportunities, even for women with families.
Yeah. Yeah, and you make me think about when you talk about the options available. You know, a lot of times people get kind of fixated on construction is in the field on a piece of machine or behind a paver, versus all of the other jobs that create and keep an organization going, right? So,
Right.
like you said, IT, marketing,
Okay.
you know, all of those things. And a lot of those positions have really come about more so like in the last 5 years or so, where you are seeing more women kind of come in those areas. But the opportunities really are endless as far as what you can apply within an organization. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Wonderful advice. So Sandy, on your journey with leadership, and I know we've talked a lot about leadership because really, you know, you became the leader of your company due to unexpected circumstances. During that challenging period, what kept you going, or where did you find inspiration to keep moving forward and to not give up? Because that's one of the things you said a little bit ago is, you know, you can't give up. What was kind of driving um, your your drive, really?
Well, after I got past I don't have that much money, so I have to keep working.
It's a good motivator.
Yeah, that was yeah. And being numb there for a while, but you know, I think once I got out there and met, you know, like the district engineer in District 6, which is where I got my first job of my own, you have it just makes you feel good, and then you cannot let them down, you know. And it's, you know, I can't control how hot the oil is myself or how the people do it well, but if you care about your crew and they know that and they know it's important to you, they give a lot more effort. And I think because I went out with them and sympathized with their day-to-day problems, so, you know, I saw and I thought, oh my Lord, this is way harder than I realized, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't spend a lot of time on the jobs when he was there because I had a family and work, but just you don't want to lose the relationships and you want the finished product to be good. And you know, we got to where we won best of road awards, and that's just the greatest thing ever. So I think in my specific instance, I grew to love what I was doing, where to start with, I was just doing it because I had to.
Right.
And then it was, it was kept me busy out of the house. That was good. But I grew to love the people and the crews, and I wanted to feel pride in those roads. And I grew to really love it. And I think anybody, if they don't love their work, their career, they're never going to be truly successful.
Yeah.
Where now at the end where I sold it, I'm really proud of what I did. And I couldn't have done it without Jeani and Dustin and Joe and all the other guys there. So, and then my banker and my
And your insurance spot.
and the insurance people, everybody was really good to me, or helped me, and then I built relationships with them that I didn't have just myself before. But you gotta love what you're doing.
Yeah. And so in your relationships, did you have mentors and supportive networks that
Oh yes,
kind of helped you through that?
Diana Reed there at Poly Asphalt has been priceless forever.
Yeah,
Ever and ever.
both of us.
Her and my daughter went to a conference in Taos one time, New Mexico, and had a great time.
We won't expound on that. It's fine.
And I went to many more after that with Diana, and I had another lady that is a great friend now, Karen, who we used to call ourselves we're the partners in crime on Broadway, because she owned a traffic control company, and I ended up having them sub my traffic control, and that's how I got to know her. But so it was great mentorship to go to lunch with her and talk about what's going on with the DOT and the work and all this stuff, and we've become really great friends, as with Diana. So yeah, and then of course, lots of the engineers are real good friends, and just a lot of good friends down there now.
So one of the main mission of Women of Asphalt is creating that camaraderie, right? Creating that support group between women, specifically in this industry. What can you share about, you've talked about your relationships with other women, but how important was that for you, for both of you, that you feel really supported you during that time, or even afterwards? Like, how important is that, do you think, having that support group of females? I mean, obviously men are a part of helping support us in the industry, but specifically, especially for Women of Asphalt, how important is that, do you feel, was important for you in your journeys?
Oh, extremely, in my case. Yeah. Diana was there from the start, because I already knew her. I just didn't know her in the way that I got to know her, but very supportive, very helpful. And then when I heard about the World Women Asphalt coming about, that was great. That's great.
Yeah, I always joke with people now that, where were they when I was this
Yeah.
young girl myself?
Yeah, we needed that when
Taking
Jeani was out there.
Men out to dinner and talking about these, Nova chip and all the new processes, and gap grade, you know, all those things, right? Like I was having all these conversations. I would
With
say
those
what you asked kind of makes me think. I think I was like, there were those couple people in New Mexico, not as many in New Mexico, but like Diane, Karen, there was like those few there, and I think like it makes the relationship and the bonds even stronger. And then when I went and worked for Koch Industries, I was in Illinois, working for their pavement solutions and performance roads. And in the marketing business development, they only had 3 women in the United States. That's it. And they were only hiring engineers for that role at that time because they decided that we need engineers because we can train anybody to sell. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that now, but I do think in the role and how they had it designed, like that was definitely a strength. I was the only one that was brought in that was not an engineer. And it was because I had that strong contractor background. Like there was nobody that could speak to the contractors or speak from that perspective that actually they would hire engineers out of college, but they didn't know anything about actually putting product out on the road. And I lived in Champaign, Illinois, which was right across the border from Terre Haute, where they had labs. And we would go there at least once a month. And do not tell anybody this, but I secretly loved hanging out in the labs with the engineers and the geeks. And they're like, I loved it. Like, so that was probably a perk that they saw in their mind, like, well, she'll work because she's into that. Specifically, there was 2 of us in Illinois. It was Natalie Eicher at the time, Natalie Williams, now, and we ended up, she was actually my wedding. We became incredible friends, and she was a really strong engineer, and I had a lot more sales skills and actual contractor experience. And we actually ended up, instead of us just covering our own areas, we actually ended up both of us traveling a lot more, but actually working together quite a bit. And you know, she would say, hey, I need the knowledge you have in this meeting next week. Can we coordinate and do this? And then I would say, you know what, I'm going to need some engineering elements, and I can put these 3, visits to clients and doing some road assessment together over here. So, that was really incredible. And I think women are great about that. And they're like, especially if you get quality women that are in it, we were driven by similar things. We wanted to see projects work. We loved the partnerships of finding the contractors, partnering with the agencies, took pride in our work. We really collaborated and used each other's strengths and weaknesses, and it made it really incredible. And I think I see women doing that a lot in this industry. So I don't know what it is necessarily, but I think we're willing to say to each other, like, this is my gap. This is my deficit. And I see that you could fill that. So how could we work together? I was actually reaching out to some partners for my business this week. And I just think, some people aren't good partners. Like they're not the ones that we're reaching out to. So we have to find
will not admit they need.
Right.
I think women are better about that.
I think so.
Yeah. And I think, and it goes back to that self-reflection, right? Like where am I lacking, or where do I need to improve? Right. And identifying those, and then to your point, finding the person that can support you with that, male or female, within your organization. Just to again, to be the asset to not only the organization, but also helping you develop even more personally. Yeah. Right. Well, we are getting close to the end, though. I think we started a couple minutes late, and I've got so many more questions to ask you, but maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point next year. But why don't we end today's session with talking a little bit about inspiration. So I'll start with you, Jeani, this time. What do you see in the industry around the changing dynamics in the workforce? I know you touched a little bit on it earlier, but strategy and calculating as far as career or for people who may still be, in college or, taking college courses to better themselves. And specifically, I know you talked a little bit about taking the risk, right?
Right.
So any words of wisdom before we end the call today around that?
So I think one of the things, and this is when we're developing a brand strategy for a client, before we actually get to any of the tactics being implemented, I have a litmus test that everything has to go through. And is it differentiated? Does it set you apart? So, right, it kind of goes back to that blue ocean. Like, let's not invest time or energy in something that's not going to differentiate you. And then is it relevant? Because while we're differentiating, a lot of times we become irrelevant to the problem we're trying to solve or the people or whatever it is. And then sustainability. Can you sustain that advantage? And I think when we think about our careers, that's a great litmus test for that too. So thinking about your continuing education and the skills that you're developing when you're going to conferences. I know like right now I'm running a conference success workshops based on some content we put out because conference season is coming up. Really look at like what sessions could I go to that maybe are slightly out of my purview. I had at Women in Construction, a woman came up and talked to me afterwards, and she's in marketing, but she came to my session, which I talked about recruiting and retention millennials. And so by default, I always have a lot of HR people and that, or owners and stuff like that. But I love that she was in marketing because one of the things we talked about is that marketing is an under-leveraged tool that HR should have access to and should be using. And I always jokingly say, even though it's completely real, like your job descriptions suck. Like HR should not write your job descriptions. Like, right? Let marketing help them too. They support sales. They can support that. They really can be leveraged in more ways. So she was really excited about how maybe in marketing, she could go back with a fresh perspective of how she also could create value for the HR department. So she was differentiating herself by adding some of these skills or even just opening her mind up to it. And it was very, very relevant because it's going to make her more valuable and it's going to address one of the primary problems she knows her organization has right now. And then sustainable, it's absolutely like she has some marketing skills. All she's got to learn to do is apply them in a slightly different way. So things like that, think about your career that way. And it kind of goes back to understand the struggles that your current company is having. What struggles, and like talk to some of those higher ups, get them to tell you and open up to you about what are the core top 3 problems. And then think outside of the box about how your role might be able to impact that, or how those 3 priorities that you think you're narrowing in on might be able to have an impact on that. And sometimes you need to communicate that value because don't assume somebody else sees it. One of the key things for her is, and I told her, I said, figure out who you need to talk to about this when you go back. And we talk about that in my conference success workshop that we're doing is, like when you leave a conference and you leave some kind of education session, figure out, who do you need to involve in this decision? If it's interesting enough and exciting enough that you want to take action, identify a couple of things you're going to take action on, figure out who you need to recruit or inform or get on board, and then set time aside to do it. Like before you walk out of that room, I actually made everybody in that workshop actually block into their calendars. Like you've picked a couple of things we've talked about. You've identified who you need to incorporate. Set up some time in your calendar in the next 2 weeks to actually work on it, because we leave these conferences and we're overwhelmed. But our industry has conference season coming up. So that's a great time for all of us to really be thinking about, what do I want to? Do I want to meet certain people and add them to my network? Do I want to attend certain types of education? Do I want to understand a certain problem that my company is facing better that I don't understand? Who do I want to connect with on LinkedIn that has information about these things? So you need to be proactive and intentional about those types of things. And that's going to really set you apart.
Yeah, that is such great timing for us, because, with the conference season coming up, and, starting of the first year, and then World of Asphalt, and then when we have our Women of Asphalt Day, it's a great opportunity to put those things that you just told us in place.
Right.
And so, Sandy, with you, before we leave the conversation, is there any last minute words of wisdom that you would like to share with the group?
Well, I really think that the comment about that you need to love your career is really important. I would not have been so a success with that if I hadn't grown to love it.
Yeah.
And I really did. I still have days I want to go back. But you gotta be patient. You need to be honest, and you need to follow through with whatever you commit to.
Yeah.
I've had to redo a roads, more than one, because we're not going to do roads that aren't really, really good. But sometimes you have to do it over for free, and that's not only money but a lot of time. But you've got to commit to that.
Yeah. Because again, it comes back to your how people view your company, right? And and giving that quality work. So, well, I just want to say we've been getting a lot of comments. No, wonderful comments from people, and we just want to thank you both for joining us. I feel like you've given a lot of information. I would recommend that everybody on the call watch it again, because there's all kinds of nuggets that we can take away. And we certainly hope we'll see you, Jeani, and you, Sandy, at our first annual Women of Asphalt Day and at the World of Asphalt in March. And we hope to see all of you who participated in the call today. So thank you so much. We appreciate everything, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.